Okay, so hey everyone, good evening and welcome to tonight's event on how to freelance as your first journalism job, whether it's during or after studying. I know my name on screen says Jem Collins, but I'm not her. I'm Katharina, the Deputy Editor at Journo Resources, and I'll be managing this panel evening tonight. If you guys want to drop your names and a short intro in the chat, that would be lovely. I think it'll be quite nice for us to just know who's in the room and what we all do. So you can also include your Twitter or social media handles as well if you want to, for a bit of networking. Feel free to do that now as I'm talking to you. So before we start, I'm just going to quickly go through a few admin bits and bobs. If you've been to a Journo Resources event before, you already know this. The event will be recorded and we'll send you a link to watch back in a few days. We just have to quickly edit and do some editing bits and bobs. So feel free to take notes if that's your thing, but I'm just here to remind you that you don't really have to. And closed captions also available for this event. So just click that CC button at the bottom of your screen. We do have questions that have been submitted beforehand, but so during the course of the panelist talk, if you do have more questions to ask, you can always pop them in the chat box because we'll have about 15 minutes of Q&A at the end. So we'll try to get your questions answered then. And then lastly, this event and other Journo Resource events come free when you're a member. So do consider joining our membership for exclusive resources like, events and special members, newsletters, print magazine, a Discord community, and also a Journo Resources book club. It's pretty cool stuff. And it's a good community we've got going. So I'll pop the sign up link in the chat as well for you to have a look at later. Okay, so now that that's done, I think I'm going to go ahead and introduce the panel moderator for today. I've unfortunately graduated a good few years ago, so we've brought in somebody else to sort of bridge that age gap here. So the lovely Fern Bekerlin will lead our panel talk today. She was originally a trainee with us at Journo Resources. Now she's doing masters at Sheffield, and she's also a freelance journalist whose work has appeared in Stylist, Strategist UK, Insider, and many more publications. Okay, so now that I've introduced Fern, I'm going to let her introduce our panelists. I'm going to pass things off to Fern, and over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, it's really great to be here doing this event today. Just as it was great to get the chance to work with Journo Resources as a trainee. And I am studying my master's now, as you said. So just bridging that little gap. And with us today, we have Kais Hussain. Kais is a freelancer who's based in Yorkshire, same as me. And he's just finished up with his A-levels. He's written for the likes of Vice, The Guardian, The Independent, and Lad Bible. And he's got experience of writing opinion and political pieces, as well as features and lifestyle. Got a lot in there. Since he started freelancing, he's made over £5,000 from pitching his ideas, which I have to say, so jealous. And we've also got Alice Porter with us this evening. Alice recently graduated from the University of Manchester, and she's been freelancing for 2 years now. She's written for publications like Dazed, Grazia, Vice, and Cosmo. She's spoken on BBC Radio Women's Hour, and it also extends to working on in-house contracts for publications like Stylist. And she also does marketing and PR. Got many talents here. Okay. So I will kick us off with the first question that one of the people here asked today. And what I'm going to ask you is, how did you both initially get into freelancing? And shall we start with Kais?
Okay, so I first got into freelancing, it was during the COVID pandemic, during the first wave. And obviously I had my exams cancelled. I mean, I wrote for my school magazine and stuff, but it was different. For national publications, it was during the COVID pandemic, and I wrote about my experience as a young person, what's it like having your exams cancelled, etc., etc. And the other day I looked back at emails that I sent in May 2020, and it was very embarrassing, my pitches. But nevertheless, that's how I started during the pandemic, because that was my USP, because it was only me who could talk about it. That was my experience.
Yeah, that's really interesting. What about you, Alice?
Yeah, I guess mine was similar-ish, apart from I am just older and greyer than you guys, but I graduated in 2020 from uni. So I'd done like a little bit of like freelance marketing work during uni, and then was really keen to get into journalism. I did have like an internship at the Telegraph that got cancelled because of COVID, obviously. So then I was like, I feel like freelancing is the best option here. Gradually kind of like started getting pitches accepted again. I was kind of using that USP of being like a recent graduate in the COVID pandemic, and I was writing a lot about Liverpool because I'm from Liverpool, and they were put into like a separate tier earlier than the rest of the country. So yeah, it was kind of like making the most of those like USPs and like personal traumas. Now I'm joking, they weren't traumas, but personal like issues that I guess editors were interested in hearing different voices on.
Yeah, and when you both first started freelancing, was it a bit intimidating? You know, did you feel a bit scared of the idea of pursuing it full time, or is that something that excited you a bit?
Should I go first?
Mhm.
Basically, no, it didn't. I'm actually more scared now because kind of I know how like, the etiquette and how stuff work and how what a pop-up pitch look like. When you have no idea what it's like, you kind of can be impulsive. You can give it your, go into it blindly, which is in some sense I think is a good thing. But no, I wasn't intimidated. It was kind of some stuff, that I pitched or some stuff that, when I was asking to write this piece, it was embarrassing if you look back at it. But at the time, it didn't feel embarrassing because, what you're going to lose, someone's just going to say no, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, what about you, Alice?
Yeah, I think it was definitely like, if not intimidating, then really weird of just sending an editor your idea, just like finding their Twitter, you're finding their email on Twitter, which is essentially what I did, and then like sending the idea, it just kind of felt like you were emailing to the abyss. And most of the time,
Yeah.
obviously, like I was a recent graduate and I was very aware that I needed to find work. Like I was living with my mum and dad at the time, but I was very much like, I need a job, and I was applying for full-time jobs at the same time, but the freelancing kind of just like took off more than the like my job applications did. But it was never something I was looking to do full time straight out of university. I don't think that's something I thought was possible at the time. I thought it was maybe something you did after you'd got like a few years of experience in a staff role. But yeah, I did go on to do it full time, and like even now after being in a staff role, I've gone back to doing it. So yeah, it was I don't know if it was necessarily intimidating, but it was really confusing and weird. But I went to a lot of like panels like this, and luckily had a really good mentor who was freelance, who gave me a lot of tips as well, which I think is really important.
Yeah, I was going to ask there, what sort of inspired you both to go freelance, and what sort of resources did you look for when you were considering it? Do you think having a mentor, was there anything that you used, or anyone that inspired you, you looked at them and thought, oh, I'd love to do a bit of that?
So I used PressPad a lot, and they did amazing work during the pandemic during 2020. So I used their resources, attended a lot of their workshops, speed networking events were really helpful. And then I got myself a mentor, which I found really useful. But the only thing that with my mentor was it was very different to what I was writing about. Necessarily, there's a big age difference, but I think it actually worked a lot because when you have someone that's completely different to you, when you add your two experience together, it's salient. It's just so good. But I think a mentor definitely helps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, agreed. A mentor definitely helps. And I got mine from, I went to like a event like this, and the person who was hosting it offered to set people up with mentors at the end, which was really useful. But I feel like you can also just reach out to people on Twitter. Like I've had people reach out on Twitter to me, and I now have like multiple mentees. So I feel like you can just do that if you are wondering how you get one. But I was also really involved with like student media when I was at uni. So I went to Manchester, and like the Mancunian is the student paper there, and it's a really, really good one. So I was quite lucky because it was a really good team of editors, and most of them were freelancing while they were at uni, which I actually didn't do until I graduated. But I'd kind of like heard about what it was and could kind of ask them like just the basic questions about it, and it kind of made it seem a little bit more accessible to me, I think. And the fact that I'd like worked within student media just gave me the basic skills, and also like a byline of sorts to kind of like send to editors when I started freelancing as well. So yeah, I'm a big advocate for like getting involved with your uni's newspaper if they have one.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about, Kais, if you did student media as well. Love to hear from you both about maybe bridging that gap from writing for student publications to freelancing. What do you sort of have to do differently or keep in mind?
So I've written a lot for early days, like the Muslim Vibe and like student magazines, but I think it's different because they actually do everything for you, and obviously you aren't getting paid for it, and there's no, you're doing them a favor rather than them doing you a favor, if that makes sense. So it's kind of, you learn so much, but I think it's really good for people starting out, and this is my advice, to pitch to somewhere like the Independent or the Metro, because the Metro works so well with you. Like literally they hone your writing skills, they teach you how to write an opinion piece. I mean, the best thing I ever did was writing for the Metro first, because they actually help you so much. They give you so much time. And I think that's what makes a difference. It's about getting the experience. You know, everyone wants to write for Vice, everybody wants to write for the Times, but it's actually a big jump from writing from somewhere else. For example, I wrote for the Financial Times when I was 16, and let's just say it taught me a lot. I can remember sending the draft first to the editor, and it was like, it's not going to work. And then I was stressing me having to rewrite it. And I've written since then for the Financial Times again, but it's all about baby steps, helps you reach your, your final destination. I mean, people have in their head straight away, I want to write for the Guardian. And I was guilty of this too. And it took me like 16 months since freelancing to actually write for the Guardian. But I think if you be too impulsive, you'll end up writing stuff that you don't want to write, and you end up landing your dream publication.
That's really interesting. Yeah, what about you, Alice?
Yeah, well, that's so impressive that you wrote for the FT when you were 16. Like, I would literally have to write for the FT. But yeah, I think with student media, I actually found like my experience was not that different to when I got a staff role at Stylist. We were using the same CMS for a start, so that meant I already like completely knew how to use the CMS. And obviously, like in my interview for the role, I knew it was WordPress, so I kind of like could say I have full experience with that. And I'd written for the student paper all throughout uni, and then was an editor in my final year, so I was really like comfortable with how to use it, which was a big thing. I don't know if all like student newspapers do this, but the Mancunian had like a week's full training at the beginning of the year. Like, so we went in for a week before classes started, and we did like SEO training. We had like professional media law training from like a lawyer who worked with like the Times and big nationals, and just like general media training, which I didn't do. A journalism masters, which I guess we might speak about later on in the event, but I learned like a lot of basic skills that I guess you would learn on a masters in like very quick small formats that week, which was really useful. And like a lot of the articles I was writing, like obviously some of them I look back and cringe on, but a lot of them like I actually think I could have pitched to like publications, but I just didn't realize that I could do that at that time. Like, so when I was pitching to them eventually, I like did feel quite confident using the pieces that I'd written for the Mancunian as examples, because some of them were actually like quite good and not far off some of the stuff I got published when I graduated. So it's definitely useful for collecting bylines or like collecting examples of your work. And then just like the contacts from it are so useful now. Like everyone, I think, who was an editor in my final year at Manchester on the student paper now has journalism jobs. So like not only was I working around like amazing people who were motivated and knew what they were doing more than me in terms of getting into journalism, but I now have contacts like across the country at different like regional and national newspapers. So yeah, it's definitely really, really useful. I think it depends on like how good your paper is at your uni, because I know the Mancunian is like a really good one and one of the bigger ones as well. But I think any kind of experience along those lines is useful. And I think when you're applying for jobs or when you're pitching to editors, like to show that you've done something like that is just it just shows that you're like interested, and it's just an example of your work, and there might not be any other examples of your work online. And obviously it is unpaid work when you're doing student media, but I got a lot of like encouragement, and I did get some really useful edits. Obviously it was all student to student, but it was still like a lot of useful like peer editing and feedback. And obviously we published our content online as well, so I could see what did well and kind of look at traffic targets. And we also like published to print every week as well, which I've never really written for print that much. I've only written for print once or twice, but if I ever was to, like, I would still cite that as experience, even though it was like 3 years ago now.
Yeah, I'm aware that some people might not have had the chance to write for student publications if they haven't studied or if they've graduated and just never got the chance. So for those sort of first few pitches or articles, I know you mentioned a few good publications there, Kais, but I'd love to know, do you think that it's worth pursuing, a bit of unpaid articles for, independent sites, or should we go straight for the big game?
I did loads first for free, like so many. I do think it is useful because you can afford to be bad, if that makes sense. You can experiment, you can try different things. I think it's good, but I don't know, Alice, do you agree? I think 5 and then try to go freelancing.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you've got like an idea that isn't timely, I would say just try and pitch it to somewhere where they're going to pay, like the Independent or the Metro. And then if they say no, then maybe pitch it to somewhere that's offers like unpaid contributions. But also, yeah, it can be useful to practice when you're not writing for money, because obviously like that's a hugely pressurized situation. And if like that was the first thing you've ever written that's going to be published, it could be really stressful. So I wouldn't say like, you know, like mine all your best ideas for free, but I do think it would hurt to have like 2 or 3 unpaid bylines, even though I don't like encouraging unpaid work. But even like on your, like if you start a blog or something, just so they're on the internet and you've got the links to share. But yeah, I think it's good practice, but don't do it forever. Like I think I could have started freelancing way earlier and made some money in uni, but I didn't even realize I could, to be honest, at the time.
Yeah, there's definitely some of my pieces that I look back at that I did for free or for my student newspaper when I did my undergrad, and I think, oh, I could have maybe,
Sure.
you know, tried to pitch this somewhere else.
Yeah,
But also, yeah, it's definitely worth, like you said, because a lot of employers nowadays, they'll look and see what kind of work have you already done, or what's your writing style even like. That's something that they're going to want to know before they interview you. So yeah, starting a blog, or I'll try and drop in the chat later some really good publications for free. The Independent and Empowered, they're really good. So I'll try and drop some links to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'd love to ask you both also, what does your schedule look like when you're freelancing?
I'll let Alice go first.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm full-time freelance and I don't actually do any marketing and PR stuff anymore. I did like when I first started out, but I've kind of let that drop off now. Mine is super varied. Like at the moment, I do like 1.5 days on shift at minimum, which means that like I'm working like at a magazine as a stylist, like 9 till 5:30 for the full day, basically like as if I'm part of the team full time, but obviously I'm not, I'm freelance. So it's either covering people's roles or just like doing some extra writing for them when they need like extra support. Often like I can do like 2 weeks at a time for them, but at the moment it's just 1.5 days a week. So when I'm there, I don't really go into the office, but I'll just like drop into their Zoom meetings and then usually write like between like 2 or 3 articles a day, depending on what section I'm working for with them. I do like a bit of like health and fitness stuff, some like e-commerce stuff, so like shopping articles, and then just general like lifestyle and news. So that's like half or a little bit less than half of my week, and then the rest of the time is really varied. Like the last 2 weeks I've been doing a lot of pitching, so just kind of like maybe writing like 3 or 4 pictures a day and sending them out to editors. And then the next like 2 or 3 weeks I'm just going to be writing every day that I'm not on shift, because that's kind of the cycle. Is I tend to do like a few weeks of pitching and a few weeks of writing, or sometimes it doesn't happen like that. Sometimes I'll be like writing in the morning and then pitching in the afternoon. So it's very varied. I tend to kind of stick to like regular hours. Like often I'll have like a really big lunch in the middle of the day and then work till 7, but I don't really work at the weekends or work in the evenings because I just don't want to. I would just rather try and work in normal hours if I can. But yeah, it's quite varied, to be honest, so it's hard to say, but I'd say like writing, commissions, pitching, or being on shift is the main 3 tasks that I do.
Yeah, so how do you sort of split up that time and organize yourself? Do you sit down and plan out the week, or is it more go with the flow?
Yeah, well, often I tend to have my shifts are always booked in advance, so I kind of know like those days I'm busy, I can't be doing any other work. And then often I'll have like commissions booked in advance as well. So for example, I've got one due next Friday, so I know I need to like leave one day next week to write that. And I've been like spent 2 hours like sourcing case studies and experts for that today. So yeah, I tend to like at the beginning of my day, for example, today was just like a really like mash, that's not a phrase, mishy-mashy. I'm literally supposed to be a writer. I can't believe I just said that. But
can be now.
There was just like a lot of random tasks I had to do. So yeah, I kind of just sat down and I was like, let's email this person, write these interview questions. Like tomorrow I'm going into like some like influencers management office and interviewing like 4 influencers, and I'm on shift in the morning and then need to write in between that. So it can be quite crazy, but it kind of suits me. I get really bored if I'm just like sat working 9 till 5:30 like I did when I was in a traditional staff role. So I don't really have any organization tips apart from just like keep on track of your deadlines and write a to-do list at the beginning of the day and try and finish it. But obviously I don't always do that either.
Yeah, Kais, I'd love to hear about your sort of schedule while you were freelancing, while you were studying.
So currently I've just been in shift work. So I did Disney for like 2 weeks without having a break, and then I made a ton of loads of money, so I've kind of taken it easy. But I've also started doing shifts for the Daily for the Daily Star, but I do it on a Saturday, and it's 3 till 11 p.m., which is actually quite nice. So I did it. But when I used to freelance whilst doing my A levels, I'd go to school for like 2.5 days. Basically, we'd have all days like that, and then I'd use the other days to kind of freelancing. But I'd always do my studying on the Saturday and Sunday because I didn't really pitch during the weeks because no desks really used to be open, or there used to be one editor working. So I used to use Saturday and Sunday either for like leisure time or studying, and then I used to use Friday, didn't use nothing on a Friday. We used to keep like Tuesday and Thursdays free because they're a really good day. Tuesday, I think, is a good day to pitch because Monday editors are super busy because they're planning for the week.
That's interesting.
I think Tuesday's the perfect day, and Thursday tends to be a day when editors like you to file as well because they have Thursday day to work on it, and they have Friday to sort it out or whatever. So I always chose those 2 days, and kind of my timetable worked.
Yeah, that's really
But I have a
interesting.
diary though. I write everything down when my next article's due, and I always plan like 2 or 3 days earlier just in case.
Yeah. Alice, have you noticed any trends in when it's best to pitch at all?
Yeah, not on a Friday, but I always pitch on a Friday. So I would say don't do that, but that's what I always do. And I just like follow up like a week on Monday. I think Monday's the best time because like then you can sometimes I like pitch on a Monday, follow up on a Thursday. Like you've got the whole week then for them to kind of catch up on it. But I don't actually think that there's like it doesn't really matter. Like as long as you're not sending it in the evening or at the weekend, I would say as long as you're sending it within working hours. If you can send it before 9 a.m, I think that's good because like from my experience in a staff role, I would spend like an hour checking my emails before our first meeting at 9, and then I probably won't really check them unless they were urgent for the rest of the day. I was a writer, not an editor. But I think because editors obviously are in meetings and have stuff on all day, like often they'll be checking their emails first thing too. But yeah, I think like if your pitch is really good and like you follow up once or twice and you're sending it at a reasonable time, like it doesn't make a big difference. I think like you'll get the commission either way. But yeah, it's one of them. At the beginning I used to think about that all the time, and now I'm just like, God, I'll just send it whenever I remember to send it, to be honest. So yeah, it probably does help, but I think like I wouldn't stress too much about it.
I mean,
Yeah,
I know from my work
pitching can be.
experience.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
The Telegraph have editorial meeting at 8:15. So if you have to
Okay.
send the pictures before then, so like the opinion team really like the pictures being sent like 7:30 in the morning. And I think I have, because from my work experience, it was at 10:30 their meetings are, and the Daily Mail, without a doubt, you have to send the pictures before 10 a.m. because literally every time I send a picture, like, we'll discuss it tomorrow, literally, even if I send it at 9:59, they'll say, sorry, too late, we'll discuss it tomorrow. So it's always before 10.
That's probably kind of different for you as well, because I feel like you write more like timely pieces, whereas a lot of my features like are not timely. Like sometimes they'll be like on internet trends, but even that they would still like be relevant to be published like a month or two later. So I think, yeah, if you've got a timely pitch, it's probably more important to get it out there like in the morning and before their news meeting, because that's when they'll be discussing commissions. But I don't do that much timely writing anymore, so I'm probably not very much help there.
Yeah, some industry secrets here. I didn't know any of that. I'm gonna have to watch this back and write down those times. Obviously pitching can be really, really scary. I'm still terrified of doing it sometimes. So how did you both sort of learn to pitch and teach yourself what should be in a pitch, and what do you put in them?
I look at the pictures that are on the Journo Resources website, and this lady called Bethany has like she's they're on the Journo website, they're on your website, and I kind of look at her style guide and I just change it and be like, I've written for this so-and-so publication, here's the latest piece that I published, and then I put pitch, and then I do the suggested headline, and then kind of 2 or 3 paragraphs about what I want to write about, and I kind of just basically use other style guides and then just change it to mine.
What about you, Alice?
Yeah, my process is pretty similar. How did I learn to do it? I don't actually know. Like going to panels like this, I went to so many panels like this when I first graduated and just like took everyone's notes, and a lot of people gave out like examples of their pitches. So I guess just kind of like basing it on that. And if anyone wants examples of my successful pitches, I'm happy to send them out. But yeah, my general format is like a little intro on who I am if I've not worked with the editor before, examples of my pieces, and then like a suggested headline. And then I always write the first paragraph of a pitch as if it's the first paragraph of the article. So like to show that A, like I'm a good writer, B, I can write in the style of the like magazine or newspaper that I'm pitching to, and C, just to like draw them in a little bit. So, you know, like I try and make the first sentence a little bit interesting like you would with an article. And then the second paragraph is always like, in this first person feature I'm going to, or like in this op-ed I'm going to, and then I'll just like say a really succinct sentence on what the pitch is going to be. So like, in this feature I'm going to explore and I can't think of a topic, but like the effect of X on X and what women think about this. And then I'll just like really like simply say what I'm going to do in the article. So I'm going to speak to like 3 women about their thoughts on this. I'm going to speak to a doctor about what they think about this. And maybe like another sentence on, I'm also interested in this element of this topic. So yeah, the first sentence is like more editorial, and then the first paragraph is more editorial, and then the second paragraph is very much just like almost like bullet points of what the article is going to look like. And then sometimes I'll suggest a deadline if it's like timely. But usually I wait till they've come back and commissioned it before doing that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think something that I picked up from coming to a lot of panels like this when I started freelancing was that personal hook's usually really important. You've got to sell why it's you that's got to write this piece, and not anyone else. In particular, there was a piece I did a couple of months ago about online support groups for women with alopecia. And I suffer with alopecia. So for me, this was something that I really, really wanted to write about. And Jem can tell you, I sent her this pitch a long time ago, and we kept going over and over it and sending it out. I think in the end, I'd been trying to get this piece placed for about 6 or 7 months. But I didn't give up with it because I thought this is a piece I want to be out there. So another thing that even for features, sometimes it can really be good to make sure that the editor looks at it and goes, now is the right time for this, is to get that newsy hook. Is there something in the news that's happening to do with that topic? So for me, I repitched it to Stylist. I'd already pitched them it once and they completely ghosted it. But when the Chris Rock and Jada Pinkett Smith situation occurred a little while back, I thought, right, now is the time, get myself in there, change the pitch up a little bit. So you make sure you say, this is what's happening, this is why it's relevant, and this is why I'm writing it. And I got that piece accepted. But obviously that took a long time and a lot of follow-ups and quite a few rejections. So I'd love to hear how you both deal with following up. I mean, how much do you follow up? 10 times? Less? And also, how do you deal with rejection about pitches as well? Should we start with Kais?
Okay, so regarding following up, yeah, I used to be really bad. I used to follow up like, I think when I was like really in the early days, like 20 times, and then kind of, yes, the editor's boss wrote to me, can you please stop bothering the said editor with pitches? It's getting out of hand. I mean, with following up. And sounds so bad, but I complained about the editor's boss to the managing editor at the time, because I took it so personally.
So that to everyone at the panel, that's probably not a good idea. Don't do that one.
I was like, this editor is so disencouraging. I was like, journalism is a trait that often needs you to be persistent, and it's a trait that I have and I'm really proud of. And then basically the managing editor said the editor approached it wrong. I don't know why I did that. It was kind of it was a trivial, it was something, you know, immaterial, but I made a big thing about it anyway. But let's just say I've never worked with that editor again. But I don't know, I think 3 is enough time to do. I think if it's a feature, I've kind of realized it's good, like with the cat piece that I wrote, I pitched it to the Observer probably a month afterwards. I heard back from them. So if it's a feature, like it's not time, it's going to like it's not timely, do it every week and then do it 2 weeks, and then kind of in a sense do it like, you know, give it a month and stuff to kind of spread it out. If it's if it's a timesy, if it's a newsy, I'd probably, follow up sometimes in the same day if it's really, really timely. Or if not, the next day or 3 days later. But I follow up maximum of 3 times, not 20.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I kind of respect the 20 follow-ups in a way. Like you've got to get your answer one way or another. No, don't do that. I would say 3. Yeah, 3 is a good amount, but I usually just do 2 because I'm just like, I want to move on with this piece now. I think like people are often unsure whether you can pitch to multiple editors at the same time. I would just say like don't, unless it's really, really timely and you really don't think they're going to get back to you, because I just feel like you need to be a little bit patient with it. Like you don't want to put yourself in a situation where both of them say yes. And I think most editors will be understanding that situation, but it's just not a great way to like start a relationship with an editor. So yeah, I would say like, I would literally say exactly what you said, like send it and then follow up a week later, then maybe a week or 10 days after that. And if you really want to, then follow up again. But by the time I get to the second follow-up, I'll send it to another editor as well, because I'm like, you've already had 2 follow-ups, like I can send it to someone else now, and then kind of just work on like a long process with that. Like even now, sometimes I've pitched like an article I pitched recently, I think I pitched like 9 times before it got commissioned, because I'll just keep going with it and I just have like a Monday morning like repitching session every week. So I think it's really worth like repitching your ideas, and if someone says no, like, or even if they ignore you, don't take it to heart, because A, they might not seen it, B, it just might not work for them right now. A lot of editors don't have a lot of budget and they might have really good like pitches in their inbox that month. So definitely just keep repitching it. You can't take it to heart that they don't like your idea, because it's probably not even that. And yeah, you can, like you say, it's really important to kind of like rejig it every time you repitch to make sure it's timely and it works for the publication that you decided to pitch it to. But yeah, I would say the only time to like follow up more than what I said as well is if it's timely. Like when I've written timely op-eds in the past, I have followed up the same day and got commission based on that. And I think in that case, it's okay just to say like, this is really timely, it needs to go out in the next few days. I'd like to write it for you, but I'm going to pitch it elsewhere if you don't reply, in a nice way. But I think it's just like good to stress when you're following up that like the reason you're following up is because you really want to write the piece and you think it'd work really well for the publication, rather than being like, I want you to reply to me, and it's so rude. Like it's just more kind of stress that you'd really like to write the piece for them in like a flattering way.
It's so annoying.
That's
like,
definitely.
Why can't you say no, thank you? Like literally, it's they could just copy and paste. Like the Metro are really good at like this. Like obviously they always send the same messages back, but they're like, "Hi, thank you for pitching this. It doesn't work for me. Do you pitch again?" Do you know what I mean? Like the generic thing. But
Yeah,
like, how
do
hard
pitch
is
again
it?
is really good though. I feel like if someone says do pitch again, I'm like, great. Like a lot of people didn't say that to me when I first got out, and if they say do pitch again, they actually do mean that, I think. Yeah, they actually do mean it though. And also just like don't be offended, because editors do genuinely get like between 200 and 500 emails a day. I mean, I'm like a freelance writer and I get like 150 emails a day. So just don't be offended, because it's their inboxes are hell, and I never want to be an editor for that reason, to be honest.
Yeah, just following on from what you're both saying there, something that I've also noticed is that when you're pitching those timely, especially news pieces, little life hack sometimes is to, you start the email, the subject, the subtitle with a pitch, but if it's really timely, stick a little urgent in front of there. That might catch their attention sometimes.
Yeah. Make sure it's actually urgent, because I know like a few of the editors I've worked with are real. Like kind of really annoying, obviously, if you get an email that says urgent and it's not, that's gonna bother them. But I feel like in that case they might remember your name and be like a bit annoyed. But I was gonna say, if you don't be worried about sending a bad pitch at the beginning, because I used to worry about this. I used to think, I don't want to send a pitch unless it's like the very best it can be, because then they might think I'm really bad and never commission me again. But like guaranteed they won't remember your name if they don't like the pitch, which sounds brutal, but it's actually good, because it means you can send them like 8 or 9 rubbish pitches, and when you send the 10th really good one, they'll probably never remember that you've sent all those rubbish pitches to begin with. Not that they're rubbish, but the pitches that didn't work with them to begin with. So yeah, definitely don't stress about pitching an editor a lot. I feel like I used to pitch like the same editor I've probably pitched the same editor like 9 or 10 times before I got commissioned in the beginning. Like it really is about persistence. And also I just noticed someone said in the chat, should you send the pitch as a Google Doc or in the email body, definitely in the body of the email, because it's just more of a faff to open the Google Doc. You just want them to see it as soon as they can.
No, definitely, yeah.
And this is so important. Oh, sorry.
No,
I was just gonna say, this is so important. If you're pitching it to like a different publication, make sure you adapt it and change it, because I'm so bad at this. I'll put like, hi editor, I'd love to write this piece for the Daily Mail. And if the Daily Mail say no, I'll forward it onto like the Daily Telegraph, but I still leave the Daily Mail all the time, like at the bottom of it. And they've known that I've pitched it to the Daily Mail, because I know the Daily Mail and the Daily Telegraph are very similar editorial. So kind of I use the same pitches. And every time I send it, I'm like, oh my God. And once I said this editor who knows that this editor works at the Daily Mail, and I sent it to the Daily Telegraph, and I said his name wrong. And he was like, this is this editor's email address for the Daily Telegraph. And he put it in the email, because obviously they know you've copied and pasted it. So you've got to be really careful. You don't, I mean, I've been commissioned several times by that said editor, but still, it kind of shows that if you don't make the effort, you know, why are they going to commission you for?
Yeah,
sure.
I've definitely done that before. Definitely, it's a bit embarrassing, but we live and we learn.
It's not only about effort as well. It's about, for example, like, even though you might think like stylist and glamour are really, really similar, stylist and glamour are both trying to be really different to each other and trying to publish content that's suitable for their readers and has like a USP. So if they think like that this could just work for anyone, they probably wouldn't want to commission it from you. They want something that is like a very like glamour article or a very stylist article, or like, I guess it's the same for the newspapers, although I'm more experienced of magazines, so I can't really say.
Yeah, no, definitely. And especially when following up, like you said before, sometimes it's good in that first or second follow-up to really hammer home, this is why I want to write it for you. Even stick in another little reason of this is how it'd fit their readership.
Or if you can say like, I noticed you published this piece last week, but I think this is kind of similar, like just show that you're really engaged with what they're writing. And I think that'll just kind of like, because a lot of editors will like read the email as well, won't have time to reply, but if they see that you're really engaged with their content and understand what their audience wants, like they're a lot more likely to commission you. That's as important as having the idea and being able to write, I think.
No, definitely, yeah. So when you've both worked with editors, when you've gotten a commission, what's that process sort of like for people who've never had that experience before?
Do you want to go first?
Sorry, should have said someone there. Should we start with Kais again?
Okay, so basically I'd send the pitch. The editor sometimes may ask some more questions if it's a feature, and they'll be like, could you speak to X, Y, and Z? And then if you say yes, or usually what would happen is, yes, Kes, I would love 700 words by this. Here's the fee, £150 hypothetically. And they put, can you file by Friday noon? And then you either respond, yes, I can, or no, I can't. Can we please increase the fee, or something like that? Sometimes when I started out, editors would, and I learned this the hard way, editors would never put the fee in the pitch first. And then I would like send the piece, and then they'll be like, oh, you should have asked for the fee first. So a lot of top publications, I never actually got paid for my work, because I didn't ask for the fee. I thought to ask afterwards. So if they don't mention it, make sure you ask first, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I've never had that one personally, but that's not great. Yeah, I'd definitely say that editors should be confirming all the details before you start writing for them. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm baffled by that. That seems illegal, to be honest. That's really, really bad and manipulative, to be honest. Yeah, I'd say the process is similar to me. Like, usually they come back, give you the word count. Sometimes they'll ask you what deadline you can do, which I guess, like, in that case, I never used to know what to say. Like, I used to think, do I need to do this for the next day? But I think if it's not like timely, then you don't need to do it for the next day. I think, like, even sometimes I used to do it for the next week, which I mean, I didn't have much work at the time, so that was fine. But you could always ask them if you're unsure, like, when do you want it for? When do you ideally need it for? Because they might not need it for 2 months, and you're saying I can do it for tomorrow. So you might put yourself in like a difficult position unnecessarily. But yeah, just like be reasonable about how timely the article is and how much time you've got as well, because you don't want to miss your deadline. And then yeah, often it's just that, like, they'll just say, this is the word count, this is the rate, submit it by then, and then I won't speak to them until I file the piece. Sometimes like editors will write me a brief, but that tends to be when I've got assignments, which is when like an editor emails me and says, please can you write this piece for us, and then they'll send me kind of like a brief of what they want, which will tend to just be like maybe like 200-300 words on how they want it to be structured and who they want me to speak to. But generally I don't actually have like any briefing at all. They just kind of like trust you to write the piece, which can feel a bit scary, but obviously like you've written a really good pitch if they want to commission you without any notes, so take that as a compliment, I guess.
No, definitely. Yeah. How do you both handle being asked to maybe change bits about your story, especially if there's, you know, maybe 1 or 2 rounds of edits, you've sent the draft and they come back and say, can you change this or have a deeper look at that? How do you sort of handle that, especially with timing if you're studying or working another job at the same time?
Opinion pieces, they tend to not change it necessarily. For example, this kind of angers me a lot. Like if I write for the Sun or the Telegraph, like they'll just throw the word woke in all the time. And like obviously I haven't put it in, but they've put it in, and I'm like, God, why have you put this woke there? And I like can't be bothered to argue with them because I don't want to lose that contact.
Mhm.
I think that's the problem with opinion pieces, because it's all about speed. Literally, they'll change it, probably maybe punctuate it differently slightly or whatever, and they may add, you know, kind of the wording, or like add a sentence. Last week the BBC said this. This is a clean indictment of whatever the argument is. So kind of that's what happens. I don't really care because it's not that deep, but to some people, you know, if they're not comfortable with using the word woke, they'd be angry by it.
Mhm.
All the features I've written, the editor always sends it before if they change it. Some stuff tends to get changed, like they may just add like an introductory paragraph about, I've written extensively about vapes and shisha pens, and they may have access to some kind of statistic that I didn't know about, so they'll add that in, but they always tell you. But opinion pieces, they literally, it's all about speed, and it's like, God, why have you mentioned this for? Why did you add that sentence in, even though I didn't put it in? But it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Something I've found that is, if especially with features, if there's a certain angle that you know you definitely want to do, and the editor comes back and says, can you do it this way instead? If it's really important to you, or if it's something that you're not comfortable doing a certain angle or including certain things, don't go along with what they say. You can always repitch it somewhere else. If it's that's the way that you want to do, or you're not comfortable with it. Yeah. So with all of this in mind, let's go back to before you pitch. Do either of you speak to sources or do interviews before you pitch, or do you just say, this is who I'm planning to speak to?
Yeah, I usually don't, because obviously like time is money. Like you don't want to be like wasting time, like too much time on a pitch before you get it commissioned, because you could be writing other pitches, especially like now it's my full-time job. Like I can't be, you know, like putting all my eggs, like, oh gosh, was it sure it's like eggs in one basket, very Love Island, but yeah, I can't be like putting all my hope into one pitch. I kind of need to be sending like lots of pitches. But like recently, for example, I like had an idea for a story that it would be based on having a really, really good case study, and I couldn't pitch, it was quite niche as well, so I couldn't really pitch it unless I had a case study. So in that case I did find 2 case studies and did like 5-minute interviews with them before I pitched. But the reason I did that is because I know I have an editor who would like the story, and I was pretty sure it was going to get picked up. But in any other case, like I generally would just give quite specific examples of who I want to speak to. So for example, like women between the ages of 20 and 25 who have experienced this very specific thing. Because otherwise, if you don't give specific examples, obviously it'll just seem like you're just kind of like guessing what you're going to write about. But generally I don't like find case studies or do any interviews before, and like editors have never had a problem with that. And a lot of the stories I write are quite like people focused as well, and I think unless it is really niche and you're going to struggle to find case studies, generally they'll know that you'll be able to find case studies for the idea, because that's like a journalist's job, I guess.
Yeah. Have you ever managed to get a commission where you haven't had any case studies in that pitch? You've just said, I'm going to speak to these people.
Yeah, all of my pitches. I've literally only I've only written one pitch where I've done an interview before, to be honest, because often I'm pitching, for example, based on like TikTok trends, and I'll be like, trying to think of one I wrote. So I wrote one about like, okay, that was different. Okay, now I can't think of one that I've written. I could never think of any of my articles off the top of my head. But often it'll be about, it was about TikTok users who were like obsessed with period fashion, and I didn't really look for anyone before, and it was less like influencers and more people who consume the content. So yeah, that was an example of one I got commissioned, but just because there was such a big community on TikTok, I knew I'd be able to find people. And then a lot of my articles are also like about relationships, so it'll be about like women experiencing like a relationship I can never say that word, I don't know why I started saying that, but like a relationship like trend or an idea, and because I know it's really common, like even amongst my friends, I know that I'm going to be able to secure case studies. So I generally say, yeah, you don't need to find case studies before, unless like you think you'll struggle to do it after you've pitched.
But you should
Yeah.
make sure your case studies are happy to be in the publication. For instance, I write a lot for the Sun, and a lot of people are not happy to be featured in the Sun. And the same goes for the Daily Mail. So you've literally got to check if they're happy with that.
Yeah, we had someone just say, how do you go about finding case studies? I think that'd be great to hear from you both about.
Yeah, I use social media the most. Like I use Twitter a lot. Often I'll just do a call out, like, has anyone who has experienced this thing wants to talk about it? Always good to say that like it'll be sensitively handled, even if that is a given. And always like good to give them the opportunity to be anonymous if the publication allows that. Pretty much everywhere I've written for is happy for case studies to be anonymous, because obviously it doesn't really affect the story. It's still a really good case study who's willing to share their stories. But I also use TikTok a lot if it's something specific. So like TikTok has a really good search function, that it's basically like a Google search. So if you put a term in there, if it's been used in like a caption of a video, it will come up. So for example, if I'm looking for someone who's experienced something like gaslighting, for example, I would just search gaslighting experience, and there'll be a lot of like women speaking about their experiences. So often like I'll reach out to them through TikTok and ask if they want to speak about it for an article, which if they've posted about it on TikTok, they usually do. But sometimes I just like ask my friends, like friends of friends as well. It's also a really good idea to reach out to like charities. For example, like I've written a little bit about like miscarriage, and in that case, obviously it can be hard to find people just through Twitter. But often like charities will have like people who have like signed up with the charity and like are willing to speak to the media to like promote the cause, or can like help you source them through like their communities as well. And Facebook groups can be helpful as well. Like there's a lot of niche Facebook groups. Like if you think of something, especially like a hobby, there'll be a Facebook group on it. So I feel like you can just search it on Facebook and see if anyone's talking about it, and try and find people through there as well.
Yeah, Kais, I'd love to hear if you have any different methods of finding sources.
Echo everything Alice said. Like literally, charities are really useful, but the only problem with charities is, I mean, I have like once wrote a piece in there too, was like you kind of sound like a mouthpiece for the charity. So that's the only problem with using charities in that sense. But yeah, again, I just use Twitter or Facebook. Just hope with it. And a lot of the time I just use my friends. Just message them a Snapchat. You want to be on Vice? Do you want to be featured on the Independent?
Yeah, I do that a lot as well. My poor friends, like every day, like, do you want to talk about that horrible thing that you went through a few weeks ago?
Yeah, no, I do that quite a lot as well. I think my friends are getting a bit sick of us at this point. But obviously, before you go and find those sources, someone just put in the chat there as well. How do you come up with these pitch ideas, the original ideas that you send off? We'll go back to Kais there, I think.
I just love the North London buses or the tubes, because the amount of ideas that come to your head, never listen to a podcast or listen to music on the tube or the bus, because the amount of ideas that come to your head is literally amazing. If you just literally walk through your high street, you'd hear something and it'd come to you come to your head. Like, I'm like literally it's just so amazing. If you just speak to your friend about a random topic, even sat in spoons, the amount of ideas that come to your head, that's how I find it. I think when you force ideas, they don't come. But I think the best thing to do is to look at like Sky News, the paper reviews, and you kind of look what's on the front page and kind of think from there. Your ideas build, but it'll never work if you sat there like literally trying to sat on your desk trying to force ideas. I think the best is when you listen. Go out and listen to people.
I definitely agree. I can't take credit for this quote. It was another journalist who said this. But a lot of good ideas for pitches will come from conversations with your mates at the pub. I'm definitely guilty of every now and then if one of my friends says something and I'm like, that could be a story, I'll get my notes app out and they're like, oh, here she goes again. But yeah, definitely. What about you, Alice?
Yeah, that's my main source for sure as well. And like I'm just saying, like my notes app is like really full of ideas. A lot of them are like drunken, like typing into my notes app. But yeah, I think what's useful with me is like my friends are all like women in their 20s, which tends to be the target audience for the publications that I write for. So it's just really useful because if I'm sat there and we're having a conversation and everyone's really engaged, I'm like, oh, what actually is this conversation about? And I think the key thing is that is there like a really small thing here that we're talking about rather than trying to pitch something like really wide ranging that covers it all. Because first of all, like a lot of publications, I mean, they've written almost everything on like most topics, so like often it's better to go like quite niche and like pick one thing out of the conversation you're having. But yeah, I use TikTok a lot as well. Like often I'm just like scrolling through TikTok and I'll know like this is an article I'm writing at the moment, which is quite a weird one. But for some reason I kept getting TikToks of like swingers on my For You page. So like people in non-monogamous relationships. I don't know why, I don't know what TikTok was trying to tell me, but I realized this must be a thing. And it is like a massive thing. Like it's a whole community on TikTok. So I'm now writing a story about that. So I think it's kind of just like keeping your eyes out on social media for like the more unusual things that you might just scroll past and think, is that a story? Like even when I just see like a trend on TikTok, often like there's something in that, even like an op-ed, like but obviously the that girl trend went like viral and there was so many like op-eds and features on that. So things like that can be quite useful. And also sometimes I do force ideas because obviously it is my full-time job and sometimes I don't have any ideas. So sometimes I do just sit down and I'm like, okay, like what have I written recently? Like, was there anything interesting in those interviews that could make turn into another article? And then I'll kind of just like scroll through the publications that I like and see what they've written on recently. For example, like a lot of publications are writing about Be Real right now. Is there like a new angle I could find on Be Real that hasn't been written about? Or generally just looking like what they're interested in. Like, for example, you might scroll through and be like, they're loving like relationships features right now. Everything is like relationships based. So can I try and think of like a specific angle on that, which obviously it can be really hard, but it's good to like keep it in mind and maybe like make a note of the things you should be thinking about. And then when the ideas pop up, like you'll know where to put them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely like to just second that and say, don't be afraid to write about the same topic twice or more than that. You don't have to do one story that covers every single side of something that you're looking at. You can even for the same publication write a couple of pieces about different angles and different aspects of a topic. So yeah, I think we only have a little bit of time left and I'd like to get some questions off the audience, but there's one that I'd like to ask you, seeing as I'm actually studying a master's and doing my NCTJ at the minute, which is, do either of you think that pursuing a master's and or an NCTJ is important for freelancers?
Yes, I mean, I definitely want to do my NCTJ. I never actually wanted to do my undergraduate degrees, but the Daily Mail and the Times senior people told me to do your undergraduate in something completely different to journalism, and then either do like join like a grad scheme, or do your NCTJ, which I think I didn't want to do it, but the kind of advice to do it. So, but yeah, I think it's useful because you need to be taught about media law. I mean, I'm doing law myself, but you know, it's so important. Literally, it's really important. Media law. I think that's the most important aspect, actually. And you can't get any jobs even for the. It's so useful in NCTJ, like whether you want to work for ITV, BBC, The Guardian, it's universally accepted. So yeah, I think it's so salient.
Yeah. What about you, Alice?
Yeah, I think if you want to be a news journalist, you need to get your NCTJ, and like a journalism master's is really beneficial. Obviously, like I write mainly for magazines and it's never like come up that I might need it. Even when I like interviewed for stylists, they didn't ask me. So I don't think it's really necessary, and I don't really need to learn shorthand for my job. And I mean, the situation hasn't come up where, I mean, I have like the basic knowledge of media law, and like I think in staff roles they will provide training on that if you need it. I did do a little bit when I was at uni, but yeah, like it's just for me, I didn't want to get into any more debt. Like obviously I graduated in 2020, so I didn't want to get into any more debt with a master's, and just like fortunately I've never needed the master's. But yeah, I would say it's absolutely like not necessary in my job at all. Like it's never come up, but that's because I'm more of a features writer and it's very different. And if you're wanting to be a news writer, then I do think it is really valuable.
Yeah, as someone who's doing both of these qualifications right now, I will say it's really, really difficult. It's a lot of hard work. And like you said, if you know that the area of journalism that you want to go in doesn't typically ask for either, if you're applying for a job or even just freelancing, then it might be worth considering whether you want to spend the time doing it. But particularly for people who are going to work in national or regional news, I'd say it's definitely worth it. Yeah.
Is it harder than your undergraduate, do you think, Fern?
Yes. 100%. 100%. I did my undergraduate in English literature. So kind of similar, kind of not, but the course load, even for the NCTJ alone, I would say it's a lot. So if you're working alongside it or freelancing alongside it, I'd say, yeah, you need to be a bit prepared for that. But it's definitely a lot of fun and definitely very worth it if you know you wanted to get
Isn't
the
it good for networking in the
qualification.
sense that all your cohort will want to be journalists in that sense? Everyone on your course wants to be. Isn't it really good for networking? No?
Yeah, I'd definitely say that. Yeah, there's I think there's 22 people on my course, and it's been a really good networking opportunity, and they're all lovely people as well. So that's an added bonus. Yeah. Okay, so that was all the questions I actually had written down. I'm just going to take a quick look at the chat and see if anyone's asked anything else. If anyone wants to drop another question in the chat, go right ahead and I'll spot that there.
I actually think
so
we are almost running out of time. So, but
Oh, no.
I do have a couple of questions that I think equally I would open to Fern as well. I think we'll wrap up with this final question. Equally, Kez, Alice, jump in if you think it applies to you. So the question is, and this is by Sophie, who submitted it before. How do you find the lifestyle as a freelance journalist? I think it's because you know, being freelancer has its own like set of stressors and pressures, and with sporadic commissions obviously comes is sporadic income, and I feel like that is a pain point for a lot of freelancers, whether or not you're a journalist or a freelancer for another industry, right? So I guess how do you go about making sure that you make enough money each month, I guess, and how do you deal with the stressors that come with being a freelancer?
I don't personally like it in the sense that I think it's better. I think it can be quite lonely sometimes, actually, more than anything. Like, even though I'm not that far from Canary Wharf, I do shifts for the Daily Star. Like, I want to go into office to network, meet people, even though it's a 30 minutes tube drive, a tube away. But I think it can be quite lonely actually sometimes. That's my only kind of downfall with it.
Yeah, personally, I really enjoy it. It really suits me. Like, obviously, I was in the staff for like nearly a year, and I can say like I definitely prefer being freelance, but I think it's definitely like a personality type thing. And I think I'm quite introverted when it comes to work. I really like working at home and like being by myself, and I find it quite hard to write the kind of features I need to write when I'm in an office. Like, obviously, my like features kind of require like a very particular writing style and sometimes like a bit of humor, and when I'm around people I find it quite hard to like get in the zone and write in the way I want to. So it really suits me in terms of lifestyle for sure. And also just like the big benefit of me is that the big benefit of it for me is that I just get to write not about whatever I want, but you know, I get to pitch ideas on anything I want to any publication, and then if they get commissioned I can write them. I mean, when I was in a staff role, like it was for like my dream publication, I got to write some really cool stuff, but I was quite limited in terms of what I can write, and kind of like the subject matter I could cover. So I just think like it's such a privilege to be able to like write for so many different publications and write across so many different areas at the beginning of my career. Like I feel like it's really helped me discover what I like writing about and what I'm good at writing about. So that's definitely been like the main benefit of freelancing for me. The money thing like can be hard. And when I first graduated, I did like freelance with marketing and PR as well before the journalism was like definitely going to be enough to support me enough to move out, which was, if anyone was interested, that was in like February 2021. So I graduated in July 2020, so like less than a year after I graduated, which was great. But yeah, now I definitely like make enough money every month, mostly because I have a lot of reliable work with editors that I've worked with before, and like I have regular shifts every month, which is important. I think if I was just pitching and getting commissions every month, it would be quite stressful, because that is based on me being really creative and having good ideas all the time. But I'd say about like half of my income comes from that, so a lot of it relies on that. which it can be stressful, but I just think it depends on your personality type. If that's like something that's going to keep you up at night and you're going to be really stressed about not having good ideas, then you might not enjoy freelancing. But for me, I'm like quite good at just like closing my laptop screen and being like, I hope it works out, and if not, I will be applying for a job at the pub at the end of my road, which hasn't happened yet, but that's kind of my attitude with things. And like luckily, like I've just been able to have the ideas to keep freelancing, and the shifts have been there as well, which is really nice. But I'm definitely like open to other options if things ever did take a turn, which I think you've just got to have that mindset. Really, it's not a reliable job at the end of the day, but it's been reliable enough for me for a year. I've never struggled to pay rent, and I've hit like a base amount that's been enough for me to live on every month. So yeah, that's kind of my experience.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I love how both of you like mainly have good things to say about being a freelancer. What about you, Fern? What do you think?
Yeah, I'd definitely just like to say that freelancing is absolutely brilliant. You get to pitch the things that you really want to write about. But for those who maybe haven't started pitching yet, or haven't got any commissions yet, or many commissions yet, I'd definitely say if you want to go freelance full time, it's worth maybe, if you have that safety net of being in a job at the minute or being at uni, it's always worth using that time that you've got now to get to grips with it, get practicing, maybe get those first commissions in, so you've really got that portfolio. I started freelancing when I just graduated in the middle of the pandemic. I was unemployed. I didn't really know how to pitch, and dealing with that sort of being ghosted and that rejection can be really hard when you've got no safety net there. So I definitely advise that even if it's just a part-time job, definitely advise that just while you're learning, before you sort of launch straight into it. And something that I'd also like to say about the financial side of it is, it can be really sort of worrying when you don't know how much is going to come in month to month. But I'd like to do a cheeky little signpost to an article that I wrote for Journo Resources last year about universal credit for journalists and freelance journalists. It's definitely worth signing up to universal credit as a freelancer or as self-employed, because they will sort of work out a base amount of money that they can give you every month, and then no matter how much you earn, they'll, if you earn say £200 for a commission, they'll knock down the amount that they're giving you a little bit, but you'll still get that money. You'll still have something to survive on. So that's definitely a really handy tip there as well.
Yeah, I didn't actually know that. That's a really good tip. But I did just want to add as well, I feel like often like freelancing gets a really bad rep in terms of money, but like there actually is a lot more money in freelancing than there is in staff roles at a junior level. And I think it's just such a big risk to go freelance early on in your career, but it does actually pay off financially. Like I can say from having a staff role, and a lot of my friends are in staff roles, there can actually be quite a lot of money in it. And obviously it's kind of like a bit iffy at the beginning, but if you can like build up your portfolio and like, are in a position to go freelance, like don't just think that you're going to be like living off beans on toast every day, because there is actually a way to do it to make money. And like I definitely make more money as a freelancer than I did in my staff role, so that's nice as well.
Excellent. I think we've got some really, really good advice like pitch there. Like I think like Fern said earlier, I'm definitely gonna have to watch back and like take notes. But yeah, so that's all the time that we have today, unfortunately. Well, thank you very much to Alice, Kez, and Fern for sharing your insights and your experiences on starting a freelance career. And obviously thank you to everybody who's joined us today. I hope you've taken away something useful. So we have regular events like this at Journo Resources. Our upcoming events that are coming over the next few weeks actually include how to sell your ideas to multiple outlets, so you can get extra money, filing your self-assessment tax returns. Sounds boring, but it's something that every freelancer needs to do. And then also we've got a fireside chat with Amelia Tate soon. So one last reminder that Journo Resources members do get to enjoy all of these events, plus a bunch of exclusive perks for free. So sign up for a membership and join our community. And like the link is actually in the chat somewhere. I posted it earlier. And and that's all the time we have for today. So thank you for your time, everybody. Have a lovely evening, and hopefully we'll see you at our next event.